Okay, so this topic name is linear algebra. Linear algebra as a subject is a very vast subject. Almost all areas of engineering and modern industrial problems, you can say, or many other fields require the knowledge of linear algebra. So that is why sometimes it is not only associated being just a mathematics subject, but it's more of a mathematics and computing subject. It has so much applications in very important other fields also. So it's as a subject is very vast. If you this is being taught to you, then this should take 1 year or one whole semester can be devoted to just linear algebra only. But in this course we are only going to focus on a very small portion but very important portion of linear algebra. So let me just begin with that. So we are going to begin with system of linear equations. So you are already familiar with system of linear equations. You all are already familiar with what do you mean by a linear equations. So here the meaning of linear is mathematically linear, right? So if you have a variable, because now if I want to write an equation, any expression or any mathematical expression, I need to have some variable, because I want to express something mathematically. For that I need to use some variable, and usually we know we use x or y or a combination of them. So for example, if we have just one variable problems, then we can have an equation like, say, x is equal to 3 or x plus 5 is equal to 3 minus x. So something like that. So these are the equations, example of equations in one variable. If I'll give you this equation, x square is equal to 3x. This is definitely an equation, but this is not a linear equation. This is a non-linear equation. Now, why this is non-linear? Because of the presence of x square. So the meaning of linearity is already clear to you. We should have just x raised to power 1. We cannot have x into x or x raised to power anything rational or anything fractional. It should be purely, the terms should be purely x raised to power 1. These kind of equations are allowed in linear equations. So this is linear, this is linear. So this is linear equations in one variable, right? Similarly, you can have example of two variables. So when we have two variables, so it can be something like x plus y is equal to 5. So this is an example of a linear equation in two variables. It can be like x minus 2y is equal to 3. This is also an example of linear equation in two variables. So that means what kind of operations are allowed? Only plus and minus. These are the mathematical, or you can say algebraic operations which are allowed in linear equation, and no product of variables. So it's similar to the way we defined linearity for differential equations. It's similar to that, but this is the basic meaning of being linear. So I think the meaning of linear is now clear to you. I was focusing right now only on this word linear and gave you example of linear equation. Similarly, you can have plenty of examples in 3 variables, 4 variables, howsoever number of variables you can have. And now we will be talking about system of linear equations, right? Because ultimately whenever you are given some equation or system of equations, your aim is to solve it. People are trying to get a solution out of it. There is no meaning of just writing an equation unless or until you are able to find a solution of it. So we will come to that solution part, but before that we need to know what is the system of linear equation and where these kind of systems are arising, right? So they are frequently arising in many business problems. Just a minute. Right. So let me just start from a very uh, simple example. Say you have, let me give you an example. These kind of problems you might have already studied. I'm just revising all that to you, that where these system of equations are frequently arising. So for example, you have this problem. A grocer has some $4 per pound coffee and some $8 per pound coffee that she would mix to make 50 pounds of $6 per pound coffee. How many pounds of each should be used? So this is a simple problem in front of you. These kind of problems are known as mixture problems. So we need to formulate this problem now, right? So when we start from these kind of problems, so firstly we need to formulate them mathematically. Actually, this is a process which I explained you so many times, that you always start from a real problem. You try to write mathematical expression for the same, and then depending upon what you get, you try to make a solution of that, right? So what will be the mathematical formulation of this? So the question being asked here is how many pounds of each should be used. So we will define the variables. So let X be the number of pounds. This is clearly, again to tell you, this is not a part of your course. I'm just building up for the subject, giving you a very simple example. So just understand it, right? Don't think that these kind of problems will be there. So X be the pounds of first type coffee, which is $4 per pound, and Y be the pounds of second type coffee. Then we will get the equations, following equations for the given information. X plus Y is 50 and 4X plus 8Y is 300. From where X plus Y is 50 is coming, that she will be mixing to make total 50 pounds. That means whatever X amount she takes from the first type coffee, whatever Y amount she takes from the second type coffee, the total should make 50 pounds. So this information will give us first equation. And what is the next condition? That the resulting mixture will be $6 per pound. So if it is $6 per pound, so it will be 6 into 50. So this is for dollars actually. You don't see that this equation is for the quantities. The second equation, each term is representing the amount, the money. So 6 into 50 will be 300, and on this side per pound, because if the first type is $4 per pound, so it's 4 into X. The second type is $8 per pound, so it's 8 into Y. It should be like this. So what do you get here is a system of two linear equations in how many variables? Two variables. So this is a one example, and as I just told you, there are plenty of other examples where system of linear equations appear. We have cost revenue models, we have transportation problems, we have job allocation problems, job allocation. So these are all actually kind of problems you will study next year in the course linear programming problem, optimization technique. So there you will have plenty of these kind of examples where you will be getting linear system of equations. Anyways, so that's all about the motivation from where these systems are arising. Now the point is solution. We want to learn solution technique to solve a linear system of equation, right? So these are simultaneously to be solved. You cannot solve these two equations independently. They are to be solved simultaneously. That means they are interlinked, they are coupled with each other. Yes, so anybody knows any solution technique to solve a linear system of equation. This is something you have already studied. So you can write your answer in chat box. Yes, matrices, then elimination. I'm reading your answers. Yes, they are correct. So given 2 cross 2 system of equations, so it's up to, sometimes we do not even know the name of the technique, but I hope just everybody is familiar with how to solve this system of equation. This is not really difficult at all. You can apply Cramer's rule also. So there is a Cramer's rule which you have studied in your previous classes to solve linear system of equations, but that comes with certain limitations, right? Cramer's rule, you remember you have to divide with the determinant of the coefficient matrix. And since you have to divide the determinant with the determinant of coefficient matrix, so that has to be non-zero. So this is one limitation of Cramer's rule. And another limitation of Cramer's rule is that this is computationally complex. Right? So you might be thinking at this stage that we did not find Cramer's rule difficult, or what do we mean by computationally complex? So I would like to tell you from a research point of view that this system which you are seeing in front of you is a very simple example, is a very practical example coming from a practical problem, but this is just a 2 cross 2 problem, right? Two variables, two equations. So anybody can solve it without even knowing any specific technique. Then maybe the next example which I will be giving you is going to be a 3 cross 3 problem. I am 99% sure that all of you will be able to solve even those 3 cross 3 problems without even knowing any particular technique. The Cramer's rule is going to be sufficient. But as you keep increasing the size of your problem, say you have a 10 cross 10 problem, and these are very common. Do not think that if these are not given to you in your textbooks, they are not there. In fact, the practical problems are of bigger size. There are large number of variables, there are large number of equations. So there, your manual computation, the way which you will be doing, solving manually with your hands, those things are not applicable. So you have to have you have to take the help of some computer software or computer program to do the same. You can do it manually, but it will take a lot of time. It will take days, it will take weeks to solve a say 100 cross 100 problem. So think from that point of view. The technique which you are going to learn should not be only doable on a notebook, it should be computationally cheap. When you make a computer program for the same, it should not take infinite amount of time to run and give you the answer. So from that perspective, I told you that if you try to make a code for Cramer's rule for a general n cross n problem, it's going to be computationally expensive. So these are the limitations of it, and that's why we need some better technique to solve that these system of equations. So the technique which we are going to learn is Gauss elimination. In fact, one of you mentioned this elimination. So that's why I told you that you might already know this technique, but now we will be doing it on a formal strategic setting. And to learn this technique, we need certain definitions. So those definitions I'm going to give you, we are going to build up a theory, and then we will be coming to what is exactly Gauss elimination technique. And in fact, we will also be giving you 3 cross 3 problems or 3 cross 4 or something like that. But because you are doing manually, but actually these techniques can be easily generalized to solve the bigger problems also. That's the benefit of learning these techniques. Okay, so before giving you the technique, we have to have a theory with us. So for that, I need to know, I just hope everybody knows how to represent the system of equations in a matrix form. Because we will be doing whatever we will be doing everything with these numbers only, these coefficients of x and y. In a computer program or even the manually, we will never introduce x and y, but ultimately we'll somehow get the values of it. So the benefit of matrix form is we will write the system of equations into matrix, and then whatever calculations we have to do will be done with the matrix only. So we can write this in this form: AX is equal to B, where what is A? A is the coefficient matrix, so it's 1, 4, 1, 8. So the first column is the coefficient vector of first variable, which is X, and the second column is the coefficient vector, because it's turning a vector, right? It contains more than one entry, so it's coefficient vector of Y. If you are somehow not clear with the term vector right now, you can just drop it. We'll come to it later, why these are known as vectors, but these are known as vectors. So the coefficient vector of X, coefficient vector of Y. And what is X? X is going to be the unknown vector, unknown variables, X, Y. And what is B? B is the right hand side of the equations. So you can see that if you multiply this A with this X, you will be getting this B. So that is why this is the matrix form. This is a simple, precise form to represent the system of equations. Now, whatever we have to do is with this A and B only. Okay. So once you know how to know the coefficient matrix, so we will be doing some operations on these metrics. So these operations are known as row operations, and particularly we are interested in knowing what are elementary row operations. So let me first give you the what row operations are there, and then I will demonstrate with the help of an example that how they are applied. They are known as operations because we are going to do something with these rows of coefficient matrix. And what are they? Let me list them. So the first elementary row operation is interchanging of two rows of the matrix. So interchanging of two rows of matrix is a thing which does not change the system, right? Suppose I ask you to solve, let me take the same example, x plus y is 50 and 4x plus 8y is 300. So it is equivalent to write it this way. Obviously, the right hand side also is going to change the order. So it does not matter whichever equation you called your first equation, whichever equation you called your second equation, third equation. So the order of the equations does not matter at all, right? Ultimately, the system is going to have the same solution. So that is why if you transfer this information in the terms of matrix, that what you have done to your coefficient matrix. So for this system, your coefficient matrix was 1, 4, 1, 8, while for this system, your coefficient matrix is, say, let me call it B. So this is 4, 1, 8, 1. So there, what you have done essentially here, you have interchanged the rows. There are only two rows, so you have interchanged the first row with the second row. So what we are telling is that this operation does not change the system. Means you can very frequently, whenever you are given the system of equations, you can easily perform this operation as per your convenience, and it will not change the system. You will be still solving the original problem. So this operation is allowed while solving the system of equations, interchanging of two rows, right? And denoted, we have a notation for it, because when you will be applying these operations in the questions, so we will be just writing symbolically. So this is denoted by this. Ri is gets interchanged with Rj. So Ri denotes the ith row of the matrix, and Rj denotes the jth row of the coefficient matrix. So interchange of two rows, this is how the operation is being denoted. And so just like this example, what we have done, we have R1 has been interchanged with R2. So I just hope this is clear, the first row operation. Is this clear to everyone? Right? So let me just move to the next row operation, that what are the other operations which are allowed. So this was the first one. The second one is multiplying a row by a non-zero scalar. Scalar means real number here, because we are in real numbers, we are not taking complex matrices. So whatever we are multiplying r is from the real field. So if you multiply a particular row with a non-zero number, then also it does not change anything. So again, take the same example to understand this. Say I have x plus y is 50 and 4x plus 8y is 300. Suppose I multiply this equation by 4. So it will be 4x plus 4y is equal to 200, right? I can do that. This is how frequently we do already. We already do these things when we solve the system of equations, that we try to make the coefficients same and then we will just do a subtraction. So we'll get the answer. So we already do this. It is just now we are naming these strategically, that this operation is defined like this, that we can multiply a row by a non-zero scalar. Obviously, do not multiply with 0, because multiplication with 0 will just change the equation. If you multiply with 0, you will get 0 is equal to 0. So this just change our equation. If our equation is eliminated, so that is obviously not allowed. So you have to multiply with a non-zero scalar. So how this is denoted symbolically? This is denoted Ri is changed to K times Ri. So their symbol, look at the symbol. The earlier symbol was this double-headed arrow, two-headed arrow, because we were interchanging. R1 becomes R2, R2 becomes R1. But here it is not two-headed arrow, it is just one-sided arrow, that because Ri is completely transformed into a new equation. And what is that new equation? It is K times, where K is any real number. Like here, your K was 4. So what you do, first row becoming 4 times R1. R1 is changed to 4 times R1. This is how you will denote this operation. So this also does not change the original system, because as I just shown you, if you are multiplying on both the sides, you still have the same equation, equivalent equation. So moving to the third operation. The third operation which is allowed is adding to a row scalar times another row. So again, I will explain you with the help of example, that adding to a row scalar times another row is again this thing, that suppose you have x plus y is 50, 4x plus 8y is 300. Then we do this. What we can do is that multiply equation with 4 and then subtract it from equation 2. So if you are calling this equation 1, you are calling this equation 2. So we are multiplying equation with 4 and then subtract it from equation 2. So this what is the operation you are doing basically? Means this is just, this looks like we are doing 2 steps, but you can do this simultaneously. So it will be 4x minus 4x. So let me call this is the first equation. The second equation will be 4x plus 4y is 200. So actually this is how we are solving, right? To cancel out these things. 4y is equal to 100. So what we did, multiply one of equation with some scalar and then gets added or subtracted with the other row. So this operation is also allowed, as I just shown you. This is something we already do. So adding to a row scalar times another row. So that means a particular row is changed like Ri plus some K times Rj. So here in this example, what was the operation? R2. The second row gets changed to R2 minus 4 times R1, right? The second row gets changed to R2 minus 4 times R1, or you can have change in R1 also, that you can multiply R2 with 1 by 4, make the coefficient 1 and then you do the subtraction. So this is how it is written. So this is minus plus is one and the same thing, because you can multiply with a negative scalar also. So this addition means It includes the operation of subtraction already. So this is how you denote this. So these are the three elementary row operations. So if you perform these operations on any system of equations, you can perform them any number of times and you will be still solving the original system, right? So these operations we need to now frequently practice with the help of examples. And now we will say, tell you that why these are done, because these are going to transform the system into a simpler system, which is very easy to solve. Remember, we are all doing this all because of we want to solve the system of equations. So I will be explaining these with the help of example when we'll be doing the real example in which we will be using these operations. So then it will be more clear to you. So let me give you the definition. Row equivalent matrices. When a matrix A is subjected to a finite number of elementary row operations, then the resulting matrix B is row equivalent to A. So that this is something I already told you, that you still remain in the same system. So the new system is known as the equivalent to the first system. So as a matrices, this is known as the new matrix. You keep on applying row operations. So you whatever matrix you are getting at every step, this is equivalent, row equivalent to the first step. Now why we say row equivalent? Because we are doing row operations. You will learn that we can also do column operations. We will come to that part later. But right now we are only talking about row operations. So that's why it's called row equivalent. So this is denoted by B is row equivalent to A. So symbolically, it means this. So this is a symbol which we'll be using for equivalence. Right? So that's the definition of row equivalent matrix. And now the next thing is another definition which we need to know. Understand it very carefully, because this is formally where our questions start from. Row reduced echelon form. So what is happening is we are given a matrix. At this point, I would tell you that you just now forget about the system of equations. All what you focus on just a matrix, because firstly we have to be very much efficient in matrices. Only then we will be taking that information to the system of equations. So right now we are only focusing on the how to do these things in a matrix. So row reduced echelon form is a particular form of a matrix. So what is that? So let me first write the definition and then I will explain. A matrix is said to be in row reduced echelon form if it satisfies the following conditions. So there are certain conditions. If a matrix satisfies those conditions, we will say this is row reduced echelon form. And in short, this is known as RREF, row reduced echelon form, RREF, right? Okay. So what are the conditions? So the first condition is the first non-zero term of every non-zero row is 1. So this first non-zero term is known as the leading term. There is another word for this same term. This is known as a leading term. So now what do you mean by this? That, see, I will be simultaneously giving you examples. Say you have a matrix, say 1 2 3 4 4 5 6 7 0 0 0 0. So in your matrix you may have a zero row, so this is known as a zero row, and the above rows. So a row is said to be a non-zero row if even one of the entries is non-zero. So if all the entries of a row is zero, so that is known as a zero row, otherwise it's a non-zero row. So this is what the meaning of this term, every non-zero row. So this is a condition that whatever the number of non-zero rows you have in your matrix, their first term should be 1. First term means we start looking at it from the leftmost, right? So like this is the first term of the first row. This is clearly 1. What is the first term of the second row? This is 4. So I'm not giving you example of RREF form, but to tell you that this is the meaning of leading term. This matrix is not row reduced echelon form because in the second row I have the first row, first entry being not equals to 1. So this is what the meaning of this is. Right? The leading term should be 1. Second is each column containing the first non-zero term of a row has all other entries 0 in that column. Now this is what is this is telling you that whenever the leading term is appearing in any particular column, then in that column all other entries should be 0. So it's something like 1 0 0 0 1 0, say 0 0 0, something like this, that this is the leading term is 1. This is the leading term of the second row because this is the first non-zero entry, right? So this is clearly 1. So all the entries in the column of leading term should be 0. Like this is a leading term, in this column every other entry is 0. This is a leading term of second row, every other entry in its column is 0. So this is what the meaning of this, that this should be satisfied. Each column containing the first non-zero term. First non-zero term is the leading term. First condition is leading term should be 1. Second condition is in the column of that 1, every other entry should be 0. So this is the second condition. Now let me give you the third condition. All 0 rows occur below the non-zero rows. So if you have a matrix in which some particular row is all 0, like in this example, all zeros, the third row having all zeros, then this should be always appearing below the non-zero rows. Means you cannot have, we cannot have something like this 1 2 3 0 0 0 1 0 2. This cannot happen. The non-zero row, the 0 row should always be appearing below the non-zero rows. So this is the third condition. And then we have last but not the least, fourth condition. It tells you that leading entry or the leading term, I'm using the word entry or term analogously, so they mean the same thing. The leading entry or the leading term 1 of any row is always to the right of the leading entry of the row above it, right? So it means something like this. Say you have 1 0 0 0 0 1 0 1 0. So this is not row reduced echelon form, because what is happening, this is the leading term of first row, this is the leading term of second row, right? And this is the leading term of third row. So according to fourth condition, the leading term of third row should be on the right to the leading term of the second row. Like, what do you mean by on the right or to the right? It means column wise. Like if the leading entry of second row is appearing in third column, so that there cannot be a leading entry of the third row appearing in second column. The column index of that should always be greater than that, right? So its accurate form will be, for this particular example, this will be RREF. It will be like 100 010 001. So this is a perfect example of a row reduced echelon form in which it is following all the conditions. I'll be giving you more examples, but right now I've just given you the simple example which demonstrates the each individual point specifically. Now we will be coming to more specific examples and test whether they are row reduced echelon forms or not. So the examples of matrices in row reduced echelon form. The simplest possible example is IN. IN means identity matrix of order n cross n. So like I2. I2 is 2 cross 2 identity matrix. I3 is 3 cross 3 identity matrix. And I4 similarly is 4 cross 4 identity matrix. So I just hope everybody is familiar with the identity matrix already, because you have already studied about inverses and all in your earlier standards. So that is what a perfect example of a row reduced echelon form. So the identity matrix is always in row reduced echelon form. Yes, please ask if up till this point you have any doubt. Right. Okay, right. I'm just going to give you the example. Yes, Uday.
Ma'am, is operation RI changes to KRI plus RJ possible?
KRI plus RJ. No, that will actually, no, that is not,
Yes.
you can say that is possible, but it's something like you have to, I will tell you. I will tell you what is the problem in doing that when we'll come into the example.
Okay.
Yeah, because when we'll be doing the examples, where we'll be doing the operations, then you will see where is the problem with that, right?
Okay, ma'am. And
Yeah.
can we correlate the column or row or elementary column operations with the with these equations?
Yes, yes. Actually, there is a theory. We will come to that later. It's actually more, the things are defined for row operations, but the exactly similar theory exists for column operations also. So you, whatever you are doing with rows, you do everything similar with the columns. So you will get essentially similar results, but not mapped to the system of equations. If you map this concept, because we are doing it here to solve a system of equations, so then you can do that. But sorry, then you can mapping the row operation with the system of equations. But if you are solving a system of equations and you are thinking of column transformations, so then it's not exactly same, because changing column is having a different effect. You are changing the variables. X is being changed with Y is being changed with Z when you are interchanging the columns. So then there might be some extra points which needs to be taken care if you want to do the mapping of column operations with the, as a matrix, it's fine. We will see that row operations give you something, column operations give you something. But when you connect it with system of equations, it should be doable with row operations only. We cannot have a combination of row and column operations.
Okay.
Right? So let me give you more examples of RREF, and then we will demonstrate each and every point again. All the 4 conditions I will explain again with the help of more examples. So let me first explain this with this example only, the identity matrix. As you can see here, I have written identity matrix is a row reduced echelon form, but why it is, you can see all the conditions. So what is the first condition? The first condition is the leading term of every non-zero row should be 1. So you can see this is the leading term of first row. This is the leading term of second row. This is the leading term of third row. So leading term, again, I'm explaining the first non-zero entry you encounter in every row. So you can see all of them are 1. So the first condition is satisfied. What is the second condition? The second condition is each column containing the leading term should have all other entries 0. Like, so this is a leading term. So in its all other entries, you can say are zeros. This is 1, these are zeros. This is 1, these are zeros. So the second condition is also satisfied. What is the third condition? The third condition says all zero rows should occur below the non-zero rows. So there should be, if there are zero rows, the condition, third condition is dependent upon if there are any zero rows, means if there is a row containing all zeros, then it should appear below. As there is no zero row here, you can see no zero rows. All rows are totally non-zero. So that means there is no need of looking at the third condition. It is by default satisfied. The third condition is by default trivially satisfied, you can say, because there is no zero row present. And what is the fourth condition? Fourth condition tells you that the leading term of a particular row should be appearing in the right of the leading term of the previous row. So you see it row wise. The leading term of first row is in column number 1. This is column number 1. The leading term of second row is in column number 2. And the leading term of third row is in column number 3. So the column index should be greater as we move in the row wise, right? As I just shown you, this is violating the fourth condition because the leading term of second row is appearing in third column while leading element of third row is appearing in second column. So it should be always right. As you move down in the matrix, the one should be, you should be seeing one on the right, not on the left, and even not in the same column. Obviously it cannot be in the same column because of the second condition. There should be a zero there. So this should happen. So this is how identity matrix satisfies all the conditions of being a row reduced echelon form. So let me give you now second example, one more example of a matrix which is in row reduced echelon form. Say we have 1 0 0 1, 0 1 0 2, 0 0 1 minus 1, 0 0 0 0. So this is an example of a 4 cross 4 matrix which I have given to you. So now you see all the conditions one by one. Yes. So this is a leading term. This is a leading term of second row. This is a leading term of third row. And the fourth row is containing no leading term, means all the entries are zero there. So no need to look at the leading term of the fourth row. It's not there. So the leading term should be 1. So yes, first condition is satisfied. The second condition tells you the column containing the leading term should have all other values as 0. So again satisfied. For first column, you can see these are all zeros. Obviously, the leading term is definitely there, except the leading term, all other entries in the same column should be 0. So that is also satisfied. We don't need to look at for this fourth column because the fourth column is not containing any leading term, right? So it's just see at the ones which are the leading terms of respective rows. So the second condition is also satisfied. What is the third condition? That if there are any 0 rows, that should be always below the non-zero rows. So you can see there is only one 0 row, and that is clearly at the bottom of all non-zero rows, right? The first 3 rows are non-zero because they contain non-zero element. The last row is a 0 row. So that means the third condition is also satisfied. What is the fourth condition? That the leading term of a particular row should be appearing to the right. So you just see the, order 1, 1, 1. So as I am moving down in the matrix, I am simultaneously moving right column wise. The pattern is this 1, 1, 1. I'm not having pattern like this 1, 1, 1 or 1, 1, 1. These patterns are not allowed when you are mapping the leading entries of particular rows. It should be always like this, right? You should move towards the right. There might be a column skip, there might be a row skip. It can be 1, 1, 1, or something like that, but it should always be the downward arrow uh, pointed in this particular direction. So fourth condition is also satisfied. So that is why this matrix is also in row reduced echelon form. Right? So let me now give you one more example. After that, we'll wind up. 100 020 002. Yes, quickly I need answers. Is it RREF or not? It is not RREF. Why? Write the reason. Yes, leading terms is not one. The first rule is violated. If one of the rule is violated, you don't need even to check the all the other conditions, right? So if even if one of the condition is violated, immediately you say this is not the row reduced echelon form because the leading term is not equal to 1. Where the leading term is not equal to 1? In second and third row. Second row ki first non-zero entry is this, which is clearly 2, not equal to 1. And third row's leading term is 2, which is again not equals to 1. So this is an example of a non-row reduced echelon form, right? So I'll stop here now. If you still have doubts, we'll do one or two more examples of the same in the next class, and then your doubts will be clear. Right. Okay, Uday, I'll take your doubts next time because we are done with the time. Please hold on till next lecture. Thank you.